Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's committee meeting. Before we actually start, we will just pause for a time of reflection. It is still Eastertide, and spring is very beautiful. The blossom and the bird song surely lift our spirits and give us hope. But life can be bleak and hopeless for some in our communities. And last week, as leader, Councillor Follows and I represented this council at the unveiling of a bench in the Jack Phillips Memorial Park. Waverley Council helped with the site planning and the bench's concrete base. The bench itself was funded by the efforts of Mike Clark Senior, and it is the 110th such bench installed by the suicide prevention charity Legend on a Bench. It is fitted with solar panelled lights which illuminate information signs with phone numbers and sources of help and support for those struggling with their mental health. Mike is already raising funds for another of these benches in Gostry Meadow in Farnham. We all need benches to sit on. We can all feel burdened, and it is good to take time and lay our burdens down. And the bench in Godalming has a spectacular view of the Minster Church and the river and the park. I would like to place on record thanks to Mike Clark and to the Waverley officers for facilitating this bench. It is really good when we work together in the service of others. And tonight, we also remember the life and service of past councillor John Wootton. John was a founder member of Waverley in 1973 and councillor for Farnham Castle Ward and mayor of Waverley in 1994 to 1995. It was his funeral today. So let us stand for a moment to pay respect. John Wootton, may you rest in peace and rise in glory. Thank you all.
My very first mayor.
Okay.
No idea what a mayor looked like.
So now we come to our meeting. Please raise your hand if you wish to speak, and you will of course be using your own microphones. This meeting is being live streamed and we'll be using our consoles to vote. Speeches will be timed at 4 minutes, other than in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 15.5, and you will be given a 30-second warning before the time is up. You may speak only once on each item, except in the circumstances as set out in Rule 15.6. If you're making a point of order, please be clear about which rule or law you think has been breached and how, and wait for agreement before proceeding. Electronic devices should only be used for the purpose of this meeting and should not be distracting to others. If the meeting does continue on beyond 9 p.m, there will be a comfort break. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Are there any?
I have apologies for absence from Councillor Lawton, Councillor Clark, Councillor Rubini, Councillor Morrison, Councillor Austin, Councillor Raleigh, Councillor Hess, Councillor Wicks and Councillor White. Are there any other apologies? Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any?
Madam Mayor, I think item 2 is the minutes.
Agenda item 3 is the minutes. I beg your pardon. In the minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 27th of January and 17th of February are published online and circulated. I move approval of these. Do I have a seconder?
Please to second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I stand admonished on my agenda papers. The minutes are item 2, but there we are. I just would ask you, Madam Mayor, on page 21, there is a reference to a supplementary question which I asked, and the response was that I would get a response from Councillors Tonham Townsend. I wonder if I might ask from you that I actually do get that response. Thank you.
Thank you. And just also to say the minutes of the 25th of February and 3rd of March will be available at the next meeting of this council. I think the next agenda item is 4 announcements. I don't have any. Leader?
Very, very quick announcements just to update on meeting 4 of the Joint Committee of the West, which is assisting the implementation team with the implementation. For the creation of the shadow unitary of West Surrey as it will be. There are a number of points that were raised, some concerns raised by Councillor Townsend and I and some of our colleagues in regards to asset distribution between East and West. And so for an example, for hopefully everybody will get, if the West has a highways depot and the East has a highways depot, I think we can all agree that we each need a highways depot. But what happens if there are assets owned outside of the county, or it's been bought wholly with public money, such as, say, Woodhatch, but that is geographically in the East? Also, what happens if the demand for adults and children's services is predominantly in the West, but the assets to help support those are predominantly in the East? Those are the sorts of discussions that are currently happening, and as you can imagine, are slightly complicated. I also had a number of elements of finance to report. The £35 million of transition money that was pooled by all of the sovereign councils across East and West is already looking like it might not be enough, much to absolutely nobody's surprise whatsoever, I am sure. So I'm absolutely sure there will be calls in the later half of June or later than that to ask Waverley for yet more money to support this transition process, something that I, of course, like many of you, am not thrilled to hear whatsoever. This is, of course, being challenged as to how that money has been spent, but the scrutiny for that sits with the Joint Committee itself. My suggestion for the Joint Committee of Guildford and Waverley, perhaps, is that they may also wish to have a look at the detail of those numbers. They may find them interesting, as I have. And then finally, just to report on the core financial issues, a baseline has been produced for the West Surrey accounts that was, again, had to be forced through, I'm afraid, rather than something that was presented as part of the process. That shows the roughly £4 billion worth of debt held by the West of the unitary. The East would be £800 million, so we're talking about a 5-to-1 difference. It is approximately 40% of the annual revenue of the Western Council to deal with that debt. The equivalent is about 8% in the East. Those are obviously slightly challenging figures. I asked the question of the 151 of the county, how long will it be until that council is in special measures as a result of those figures? The answer I got back was just about 1 to 2 years, which is what we were, some of us, predicting in this room and at the county when this debate was originally had. It is also concerning to have now fully articulated to us that the transformation savings, many of which certainly myself, Mark and others thought were unrealistic, if those are not realised by the time a 114 notice is given, which could well be in year 1 or 2, there might be a problem. And of course, those transformation savings are unlikely to be realised in anything like that time. So watch this space. Anybody, of course, who wishes to be elected to that new unitary, I am sure you all have answers to some of the grand problems of the new West Surrey Unitary. I'm sure those with adults and children's services requirements will be relying on all of us to have an idea of what we are going to do to make sure that no harm comes to them in the future. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for mentioning Mike and the legend on a bench. It was very, very gratifying, not just for the subject matter, but to also to be discussing somebody else's seat for 5 minutes in this particular time. Mike's done a fantastic job wherever he's been, and I look forward to him successfully being able to install another bench within Waverley, this time in Farnham. And with that, Madam Mayor, I shall hand back to you.
Thank you, Pedro. No. No. And finance officer. Thank you. So we get to agendas 5 and 6 agenda items, and there are no questions by members of the public or by members. So we move swiftly on to number 7, the supplementary budget request for Warm Homes Social Housing Fund Wave 3. Are there any questions on clarity? Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I do note that on page 34, there's a list of appendices, which 15.1 is Appendix 1. And I presumed that the page 37 onwards is that Appendix 1, which relates to an executive meeting in November 2024. That's not very explicit in the appendices. And then it goes on to 15.2, which is Appendix 2. And I wasn't able to find an Appendix 2. I just wonder if you could clarify that. And I wonder also, as a matter of clarification, could I ask was, is the impact in terms of funding solely to do with the HRA and it doesn't go to the general fund? So there are two distinct questions, one on a clarity of the paperwork and one whether it's HRA alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader.
As far as Councillor Townsend and I can see, there is a link to that appendix, which I appreciate isn't helpful if you've only been looking at papers. So that's something that we'll make sure is sorted out in the future. There's not reliance upon a link in there. And in terms of where this hits financially, and this hits in a positive sense in that it's money from the state, this is solely HRA driven. Yes, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you. No other questions? Councillor Crowe, do you so move the proposal?
I do.
And do you have a seconder?
I do.
And
Please-
do you
please
reserve
to
your
second,
right
Mayor.
to second? Do you
Please to
reserve your-
second.
Do you reserve your right? Just
And yes, I do reserve my right.
thank you. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you very much. So first of all, thank you very much to Katie Riley and her team for this very detailed report. You will recall that Waverley Borough Council made a successful bid to Warm Homes Social Housing Wave 3 in November 2024. In February 2025, we were awarded over £2 million over 3 years from the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero, and we're contributing co-funding of £1 million yearly to a total of £3 million over the 3-year programme, which is now currently being delivered. This 3-year programme will continue as Waverley becomes part of West Surrey. The fund aims to deliver warm, energy-efficient homes, reduce carbon emissions and reduce fuel bills, tackle fuel poverty and support green jobs. This work fully supports the Council's strategic priorities by commitment to achieving net zero by 2030, to decarbonising council-owned homes, to taking a fabric-first approach to retrofit and tackling fuel poverty. The secured grant for the financial year 25-26 is for just over 608,000, and it has been concluded that following the grant application, an additional budget estimate of a bit over 510,000 is required to deliver against the contracted programme. As I mentioned above, a contractor has been procured and the programme is being delivered and is on track against the grant funding requirements for the financial year 25-26. Council is now asked to approve the supplementary increase as outlined in the recommendation at 2.11. Thank you.
Councillor Follows.
Very, very quickly, just to indulge members slightly, there's these LAF funding. Our council has been very successful at applying for multiple rounds of this, and they've been very, very beneficial. And in the long run, it's likely that these will return to the general stock. It's just also worth highlighting paragraph 1.5, just to indicate to members why this is coming now and when it is, because the turnaround for the signing of the money for this is insane. And so we need to do it now.
Yeah. That's item 8. Yeah. Yeah.
Then you'll be very confused by what I just said, and I'll retract it all.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam. Yes, I was just searching for 1.5 and couldn't find it. But there we are. The leader is, is confused. Madam Mayor, I welcome this, and of course it's nice to get money from the government, and we of course put some extra money in. We're putting in an additional 500,000. I would have liked a little more detail in the report. When you go to the appendix and you look at the November 2024 report, it talks about improving the performance of approximately 400 of the council's homes. With the extra 500,000, does that now go up? Is that how many homes are we looking to improve? And I'd also like to know how this will be monitored. In the course of time, will we get a report back which says we've spent this money with this intent, and the intent is now delivered because we're able to demonstrate that the savings in fuel and so on and so forth are what we said they would be. And I'd just like a little more flesh on the bones in this report, if that were possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other speakers? Councillor Murray and then Councillor Hyman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a good thing, right? As a lot of things, it's grant, it's money from the government, which we have to spend, and I support it, and there's nothing really to argue about. So my group and we discussed it, and it's absolutely fine. The only thing I would say is that we do struggle, and I talked about it at the joint ONS when there was a disabled grant for refitting people's houses to get them out of hospital, and it's whether the contractor can actually do the work. And I think this is the where these things backlog and where these things happen. So it really is down to the efficiency of the contractor of spending this money in a reasonable time. And I think that is my concern, because I know at ONS, we always have a surplus in the housing repairs account where we can't spend the money because we can't get the contractor to do the work. So this is another grant which we've got to spend the money on, and it's time limited. So I really hope that the contractor which we've agreed with is going to be able to carry out the work efficiently, because that's where it will fall down. But thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hyman and then Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Yes, it's always good to get a grant, but our role has to be to make sure that the money is being spent wisely. And I do have some quite serious concerns from personal experience as to whether we are going to be checking up on the work to make sure it's done. There have been many stories over the past 40, 50 years of companies not doing cavity wall insulation, drilling holes, but not actually bothering to, a couple of holes in the wall, fill them in with cement, not bothering to actually pump the cavity wall insulation in. There was a neighbour of mine, not far away, who was in hospital, and she had an upstairs flat of Waverley's, and she, in her loft, one of the main water pipes sprung a leak and went through her flat. She wasn't in, drenched the flat below, which was a leaseholder. And I was able to get in because I knew of her key code, and I was able to go in the loft and also sort out what the problem was and turn the water off and save us some money that way. But when I went up into the loft, I was surprised that there was very little loft insulation. Now, we're told that all of our homes have lost loft insulation. We're told that all of them have had a second lot. And the problem here is, are we working on proper information? If we're going to be spending this money, we've got to target it where it's needed most. And I know from personal experience that we do have properties that have got next to no loft insulation, but our officers think that they're well insulated. And this is all down to having proper inspections. Ever since I was first a councillor, we've been told we were going to have complete stock condition surveys. It hasn't happened in 20 odd years. So when are we about to do this? Are we going to do it before we become West Surrey? Because I can't imagine they'll be any better than us. We want to make sure we do this. So can we please, a message to our officers, make sure we know what the problems are and target the money properly, and let's spend it. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Williams, and then councillor Follows.
Yeah, just thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in relation to the last comment, I understood that the social housing condition survey was actually sort of fairly well progressed at the moment, but I no doubt Councillor Crowe can elucidate further on that. I'm certainly very pleased to support this report, and I think it's important that we recognise what a significant achievement this programme represents. Securing the amount of funding that has been secured through the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund is no small feat. It reflects a great deal of hard work by officers, and it builds on a strong track record that this council has developed over a number of years. And again, I'm particularly proud to have played a part in that journey during my time as portfolio holder for environment and sustainability. We made a clear commitment then to improving energy efficiency of our housing stock, not just to meet climate ambitions, but to make a real difference to residents' lives. And it was a great joy to visit some of those homes that had been improved with Councillor Crowe last year. Because this is more than about carbon, it's about warmer homes, lower energy bills, improved health and well-being for our tenants, especially those most vulnerable to fuel poverty. So the additional funding allows us to go further and faster. It ensures that we can deliver on the programme already underway, meet our obligations to the funder, and, as Councillor Crowe noted, continue to make meaningful progress towards our 2030 net zero target. So this is a positive story of external funding secured, local priorities being delivered, and tangible benefits to our residents. So I'm very happy to support the recommendation. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Follows.
Just a very quick reply to Councillor Hyman. I mean, our stock survey is...
Madam Mayor,
It's
point
been-
of order.
I have
could
already
I-
spoken. Yes, you're quite right.
Could I ask why Councillor Follows is being asked to speak?
Well, I think his first set of remarks were on the wrong agenda
Well,
items.
that's his problem, not mine.
No, I think if it's up to my discretion, please speak.
My apologies, members, for speaking on the wrong item at the beginning. I will, I'm sure, be covered by Councillor Crowe and will not need to speak on the second one. I just wanted to reply to Councillor Hyman briefly. The update that goes to tenants on an annual basis at the Tenants Panel and the Landlord Services Advisory Board talks of our ongoing programme of stock condition surveys, and it goes into the details of where that is. Stock condition surveys are actually something that pretty much has to carry on all the time, because unless you want to pour some aspic or something over the top of a house, it's unlikely to stay the same state forever. My hope is, and then I will stop, my hope is that in all of that conversation about that individual resident, that you did report it to Waverley Borough Council, and Waverley officers were made aware of that issue so they could help that resident, because that obviously would have been the most important thing that needed to happen straight away. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Councillor Goodridge, did you want to say anything else? No. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Rivers, do you want to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to have one or two words based on my pleasure of seconding Councillor Crowe. Certainly, Councillor Hyman, stock condition surveys are well underway at the moment and will be rotating on a 3-year basis. I think you were very brave to go up into an attic. It's the sort of thing that tenants are well warned not to do because of health and safety issues. If anybody is interested, and I'm sure you are, in more detail of how we are progressing issues like moving to EPC Certificate C across the board, then on this Thursday at 2:00, the Landlord Services Advisory Board has an agenda item specifically on this point. So I would encourage you after a gentle light lunch to come along virtually or physically at 2 p.m. on Thursday to find out more and maybe to ask specific questions to officers who will be at that meeting and can help you through it. But two things, if I may. Our officers are terrific at winning these bids. It is not an easy thing to win a bid. You have to work very hard at it. And we have history here. So well done, our officers. And of course, this process is a real testament to our commitment to decarbonise our council homes, to tackle fuel poverty and improve energy efficiency, and to make the lives of our tenants cheaper and more comfortable. And my goodness, we need to do that. It's a real benefit to our tenants. Mayor, thank you very much.
Point of personal information, if I may.
Yes, Councillor Hyman.
Thank you, because I've just had a couple of comments made in response to what I said, which I said in good faith, and what I said is absolutely true. And effectively what I've got from the administration is we're not going to listen, we're just going to pretend everything's fine. Well,
Councillor Hyman,
we do have a
Councillor
problem
Hyman,
with
thank
stock
you.
condition
Thank
surveys
you.
for 20
Thank you.
years.
Thank
It's
you.
never
Thank
been
you.
done.
Thank you.
But
Councillor
just pretend everything's happy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I just want to finish by saying that the visit that Councillor Williams and I and officers undertook last summer was absolutely inspiring and was an absolute testament to the money being properly used and spent for the purposes for which it was intended. And I have absolutely every confidence in officers making sure that this Wave 3 funding is spent in the same way according to the budget, to the programme requirements. And I just want to say again, thank you very much to them, and I look forward to being taken to see what impact it all has.
The recommendation, which I'm happy to read if you would like it read, but you have it in your papers. So we come to vote on the recommendation for a supplementary estimate increase of £510,685.70p. When lights show, please vote.
Can we do it by general assent?
They are working. They are. No, when lights show, please vote.
Thirty-six in favour and 3 abstained.
So that is carried.
36 in favour.
36 in favour and 3 abstentions. Agenda item number 8, housing delivery, the local authority housing fund round 4. Councillor Follows, you've already spoken. Are there any questions on clarity? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Given the confusion recently about what is meant by open market valuation, on the supplementary papers on page 23, in section 2, there's under financial viability, halfway down that table, there are assumptions which talk about the total value of the 6 homes that are going to be purchased as the open market value as a sum of money. Could someone confirm that this is a true open market value, or is it an open market value that is constrained by the fact that these will be used for affordable and social homes? Thank you.
Can the portfolio holder answer this without divulging anything, as this is on pink papers?
Mayor, it seems to me that these are in exempt, and I would not wish to tread anywhere near exempt without being in exempt and without the help of officers.
Is it the will of council to go into exempt? No? I hear. Please raise your hands if you would want to go into exempt. No. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions, Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a note of clarification in the recommendation. The recommendation says that in 2.11, we approve a budget of 3,35600 to be added to the capital programme 1527344, of which is LAHF round 4 funding. By my understanding, in paragraph 1.3 and also in 12.1.3, the figure of 1527 should actually be 1519.6, which is the capital element. There's another 7,744, which I guess is a revenue allocation. That needs to be corrected, I think.
No. Councillor Rivers, can you clarify?
I will certainly attempt that. I'm assuming that Councillor Martin is concerned that there is a capital allocation and a revenue allocation. The revenue allocation being £7,744, which when added to 1519,600 comes to 1527,344.
But the recommendation only talks about the capital programme, and that's wrong.
Thank you, Pedro.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Just to address this issue, the confusion here is that that is, as Councillor Martin correctly sets out, that is the capital budget allocation plus the revenue budget allocation, both of which are part of the capital programme. So the recommendation is correct, but I can see how that might have been confusing, so it's helpful to have clarified that.
Madam Mayor, could I just then clarify why in one paragraph 1.3 it talks about a revenue allocation of 7,744? It's either revenue or capital. It can't be both.
Thank you. Yeah, you're right, Councillor Martin. So specifically drawn out in that recommendation is the capital part of the LAHF funding, which is the 1.527. On top of that, there is a £7,000 revenue allocation, which is not being drawn out in the recommendation, but it would form part of the 3.3 million. So it's included in the overall scheme cost, but the recommendation wording of the LAHF round 4 funding allocation is for the capital allocation only, not the revenue 7,000, which is on top of that. Yeah.
Any other questions? No. Councillor Rivers, are you
Thank you,
moving the
Mayor.
proposal?
I'm happy to talk on this, and I note that I have a seconder in Councillor Janet Crow.
And Councillor Crowe, do you reserve
Please
your,
to second. I
your
do.
right?
Yes.
Councillor Rivers.
Thank you, Mayor. Bear with me, members. Thank you. Members, you will note the detailed financials in the officer's report, most of which are in exempt. And as you can well understand, I tread there very, very carefully indeed. This report details the successful bid for funding by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government through the Local Authority Housing Fund Round 4. This is for the delivery of 6 decent and affordable homes. Sounds something out of Dickens there, but that will be used for temporary accommodation for homeless families and for families on the Afghan resettlement programme. And may I once again state that I am extremely proud to congratulate our skilled and experienced officers who have worked hard and well and successfully in securing these funds. And members, you know that this council has been successful in winning bids from this source from round 1 to deliver 11 homes and from round 3 to deliver 3 homes. Now, in essence, on the 6th of March 2026, the MHCLG confirmed fundings from the LAHF round 4 of the capital allocation identified in our papers. Match funding is required to deliver this scheme. The LAHF funding allocation is 40% or 50% depending on the property type. So the recommendation is for this council to approve a budget of £3,335,600 to be added to the capital programme, £1,527,344 of which is LAHF round 4 funding, with the matched fund balance from the housing revenue account to deliver 6 homes as set out in section 12.4 of the report. Mayor, I am happy to recommend this to the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any speakers? Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I think I welcome this, but I just would like some clarification. I'm looking at paragraph 6.6, Madam Mayor. We are talking of 6 homes, and there's an analysis of the 6 homes, of 1 for the TA, which I presume is the temporary accommodation element, 3 of which are for round 4 of this, if I understand what that says, which is 3. And then at the bottom of the page, it's round 4 large resettlement element, which is a further 2. Could I understand, is that 5 intended for the Afghan resettlement scheme, of 1 for something else, which is temporary accommodation, or have I missed out all 6 for the Afghan resettlement program? And then the second question is, are those Afghan families in mind already here in Waverley, or are they going to come in and be housed in Waverley as a result of this programme? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murray. I think Councillor Rivers will address those later.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I think on the whole, I support this. It's an honourable thing to do. And the only question I did have was doesn't really say how much we're spending on temporary accommodation and B&Bs at the moment in Waverley. That would be quite a useful figure to have, because if we're spending £1 million a year, then obviously it makes sense to do this, more sense to do this. So on a humanitarian level, then I'm absolutely supportive of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hyman.
Thanks. Yes, I did echo what Councillor Murray's just said. On my desk when I came in, I found a nice bit of guidance for us, which says as for principles of decision making, we've got to have proper officer support in order to be able to achieve our aims and outcomes, which have got to be clearly defined. I am somewhat concerned that I'm discombobulated because I didn't understand everything, unfortunately, that Councillor Martin said. He was rattling through it far too fast for my tiny brain to be able to cope with. I am not entirely sure that I know enough to make a decision here, that I feel that I have had the officer support. I'm certainly quite unhappy that the administration seems to think that we shouldn't be able to go into exempt to be able to discuss things. Which is unfortunate from the way that was done. I do think that we should be able to get the information that we need, and if that means going into exempt in order to be able to satisfy ourselves, even if only briefly, then we should be able to do so. So this is government policy to the Afghan resettlement scheme. My understanding is that the Afghan families are being held in air bases in all sorts of places around the country. They're not necessarily in this borough at the moment, and we're not incurring expenses for temporary accommodation necessarily. That is my understanding, but it seems a sensible thing to do because the government is giving us half the money for these homes, and they will hopefully end up within the within the housing revenue account in the long term. But then with the new council, we really don't know what's going to be going on. So I'm going to abstain on this one because I don't know whether I've got enough information here to know whether actually this is a good deal or not. But I do support it generally in its aim and the government's aim. But I'm just not happy with the way that that this has been done. Thank you.
Councillor Gale.
Just a very quick question, Madam Mayor. Will these houses be on the right to buy scheme?
Mayor, if I may do a few things. I think the of the 6 homes that are being outlined here, one is for families that are homeless, and the other 5 are set aside initially for the Afghan resettlement program. That these houses, of course, are within the HRA. And in terms of right to buy, thank you, Leader. Yeah, right to buy. For the lifetime of the property, they are not exempt from RTB. So if the property is sold, the funds from the sale will be reinvested in additional stock rather than returned to the government, to MHCLG. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? No other speakers. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you very much. I just want to finish by just saying that this fund will be used for the temporary accommodation for homeless families or for families on the Afghan resettlement programme. And I do think, similar to Councillor Murray, that we should actually feel proud to support this group of people. And I just want to note as well that if the homes under 611, if the homes are sold, the funding must be returned or any receipts reinvested into social or affordable housing. So I think that's a very important point just to finish on. So obviously I wholeheartedly support this.
Thank you. And do you have anything further to say, Councillor Rivers?
I don't think I can add anything worthwhile to what has already been said. Thank you, ma'am.
So we have a recommendation which you have in your papers. And when lights show, please vote.
With 2 abstentions.
That is carried 37-4 with 2 abstentions. We come to item number 9, Regulatory Services Animal Welfare Charter. Are there any questions on clarity? No. Councillor Juice, are you ready to move the proposal?
I am, and I believe I have a seconder.
Pleased to second, Madam Mayor.
And do you reserve your right to speak?
I do.
Councillor Juice.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to introduce this item, which is the Regulatory Services Animal Welfare Charter. As members will remember, at the last full council meeting in February, Councillor Williams proposed a motion, which I was happy to second, proposing the creation of an animal welfare charter for Waverley Borough Council, with a view that this could be adopted by the West Surrey Unitary Authority in due course. The aim of this charter was to strengthen our commitment to caring for animals through establishing a structured framework around our existing policies, such as the Biodiversity Policy and Action Plan, Tree and Woodland Policy, and Pesticides Policy. As members can see before them on the agenda, I'm particularly pleased that the Regulatory Services team has put together this charter very expediently. It makes total sense that the focus of this charter should be on the powers that we have through regulatory services to ensure no animal comes to unnecessary harm. The charter acts as an important starting point. We are committed to reviewing additional aspects of animal welfare we can protect and enhance through other council teams and services to ensure continued development of the charter. This enables the charter to grow in scope ahead of its intended implementation in the West Surrey Unitary. To address some of the key issues raised in the February full council meeting, there is a clear need to understand the requirement of targeted pest control where there is a risk to the health or well-being of the local community, whilst upholding the duty of care we have towards animals as part of the Animal Welfare Act 2006. The way we have to intervene in these circumstances will clearly be different to the way, for example, animals who graze on Waverley land will be treated. Furthermore, there are no additional financial resource requirements in approving this charter, so I'm happy to recommend it to Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm pleased to see this on the agenda today, and I'm pleased to see the report. Of course, members will recall that this originates, as Councillor Deuce pointed out, from a motion that was moved by me and seconded by him. And it's really encouraging now, I think, to see that the commitment is translated into a tangible document, particularly given the pace at which this has been brought forward. So I think that the Charter, as we see it, provides a strong and welcome foundation. It sets out clearly the principles we want to uphold and how we discharge our statutory responsibilities in relation to animal welfare. However, I do think there is an opportunity for us to go further, particularly in moving from principles to more explicit commitments around delivery beyond the important but sort of narrower role of regulatory services. So, for example, as as in the sort of exemplar charter that we had associated with the motion last time, there's scope to strengthen how the charter informs our procurement decisions, how we work in partnership with local animal welfare organisations, reflecting some of those elements that were discussed at the council meeting last time. Now, I had considered sort of proposing an amendment to the proposal this evening, but I'm reassured by the portfolio holder's introduction, which does make it clear that it is intended as a first step, with further work, as Councillor Deuce just pointed out, to broaden the Charter across other council services. So I'm very happy to support the recommendation this evening, but in doing so, I would request a clear assurance from the Executive that they will bring forward a revised and expanded version and a plan to promote this as a model for the future West Surrey Authority within the remaining life of this council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Martin.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. One or two members asked if I was going to repeat my speech from the last time that we discussed this matter. I'm tempted to so do, but I won't. My main concern at the time was that actually the Charter as proposed is very far-reaching and has lots of implications, including many cost implications. And if I look at page 63, which talks about the basic welfare needs of animals, and it doesn't say all animals, but the implication is all animals, the need for a suitable environment, the need for a suitable diet, to be able to exhibit normal behavior patterns, need to be housed, need to be protected from pain, suffering, injury and disease, factor in basic animal welfare needs. This is for all animals. My concern was that this is a far-reaching commitment, and it ought to be expensive. There ought to be lots of money attached to it, which is why I opposed it, because I didn't think it was the right thing to do. Now we have this report before us, which actually says, yeah, that's all good stuff. We're accepting it all, and there are no financial implications, or it'll just be absorbed within the existing budgets. And I'm amazed that it can be so absorbed. I have to say I opposed the charter because I just don't think it's workable. I still don't think it's workable, and I don't think this goes anywhere near the need to address the charter that this council embraced. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Merriweather.
Well, I wasn't going to speak on this either, but I'm amazed at the notion that good behaviour has to come at a price. People don't behave well or appropriately unless it costs something. I just don't recognise that logic.
Thank you. Councillor Gale.
Just briefly, if you live in estates as I do, you know that you are swarmed with foxes at night, which is lovely, and they live on the commons, which are very near to us as well. The only problem is they do bring all sorts of things into gardens, which can then be a problem for your domestic animals. I've actually had that problem in my own garden with a dog picking up something that the foxes brought in, and it really wasn't healthy for him to eat. So I'm wondering if Waverley will actually be available to do something about these problems, because if we're looking after the foxes, which I think we should do, and I have no problem with looking after wildlife at all, but they should be discouraged from coming into the built-up areas, I fear. We see a lot that have been run over. So would Waverley be willing to do something to maybe dissuade people from feeding foxes in their own gardens or something like that? Because I feel that is part of looking after the foxes and domestic animals. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, interesting that Councillor Gale should bring up, the difference or the living together, if you like, of the domestic and the wild animals. My interest is with wild animals, I have to be honest, and always has been. The species decline in Surrey is frightening, and we know why it's declining as much as it is, and it's all to do with the fragmentation of the landscape. We're very good at designating landscape and then saying in that landscape we're going to have good habitats. That is useless unless the habitats are linked together. And Councillor Merriweather raised the question of cost. There's a huge cost because basically we've got to change an awful lot of what we do with planning permission. We've got to change an awful lot of what we do with, say, hedging, with the way we look after aspects of the land that we own. So I'm a bit like Councillor Martin here. I think this is so huge a subject, but if we are going to do it correctly, then there's no point in just sort of having a go at dog owners. We know there's good, we know there's bad, but have a really integrated policy that says we are actually wanting nature recovery. We are actually wanting to bring back these species. Not it would be nice, but we are actively going to do it. And that's going to cost a fortune. But personally, I think it's worth every penny.
Thank you. Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, on the subject of foxes, you are never going to discourage them from built-up areas and towns, etc. And one of their favourite things at night is stealing from the caddy bins, the food caddy bins that are put out for collection. Mine has been dragged down the road. I've now got a bungee rope round it and a brick on top because all the food gets scattered all over the road. So, we're encouraging them to come and have dinner, basically. Certainly on the business of dog walkers and what have you, they need to be encouraged to learn how to pick up their dog's fouling in the bag and take it home, or put it into a bin that's not overflowing, because there's too many bins that I see around that aren't emptied on a regular basis, that are a health hazard to children, because people just throw their bags around the bin, on top of the bin, and where have you, and they smell awful. So I think there's certain areas that we could certainly do better on, but I do believe that, you know, I agree with this policy. I think it's very good, but there's some areas that we could work on. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Hyman, and then councillor Murray.
Thank you. Yes, I do share some of the concerns as Councillor Gale has mentioned. What about vermin? Foxes, pigeons, squirrels. I mean, am I meant to be homing these things? What about my neighbours who feed the pigeons? Are they doing the right thing? They're feeding pigeons, feeding foxes. Are they doing the right thing, or are they doing the wrong thing? And to what extent are we as councillors and this council and our officers willing to take responsibility and take charge of these things and make the decisions as to who's doing the right thing and who isn't doing the right thing? Because it looks to me like we're going to be sitting here in judgment of people with this policy. I had a cat adopt me, a nice young cat, I thought, came and adopted me. Front door was open last summer. It stayed without me knowing for a few days behind my sofa. It pooed, it peed, it did all sorts. I ended up chasing it around the place and chasing it out eventually. And this was a horrifying experience for both me and the animal. But you know, should I have called Waverley and said, look, actually, this council's got a responsibility to home this, so you're going to pay me to home this cat that I don't want and that doesn't like me and I don't like it, it's turned out. You know, where are we going to go with this? Where are we going to go? And Councillor Coburn's talked about species decline. Well, if we're going to do the right thing, we're going to start obeying the laws which apply, aren't we? I mean, I've been fighting for 20 years on habitats issues, as Councillor Coburn knows. Are we going to actually start obeying the law and taking our responsibility seriously, or is this just fluff, just words on a piece of paper, you know, for us to have a laugh at, and for some people to take really seriously and show how much they care, and they'll tell everybody on Facebook how much they care when they go home, I'm quite sure, and everybody will be caring as well in return. No, you know, we need to think about this. There are cost implications. I'm going to be abstaining again on this because I'm not very happy that we haven't come up with a policy which is, I understand the pressures that officers are under. I'm not criticising them for it. We asked them to come and do something. They did. They've done the minimum necessary to keep us happy on it. But to me, it says things which we're not going to do. And it makes us do things which we're not going to do or not going to be happy to do, and no one's going to take any responsibility. We've got to have accountability. You know, this nice piece of paper on my that lamination on the desk. We're accountable and we're honest and all the rest of it. This is just leading us up a garden path where actually it's virtue signalling as far as I'm concerned, because it's not complete. I'm not very happy that we're not taking looking at this properly. But we don't want to be doing it all night. We are going to have something in place. This will have to do for now. Can we please make sure that when this goes forward to West Surrey, that they do it properly?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't going to speak on it because I really don't have a strong opinion on it, and I think, but listening to everybody and what they're saying, and Councillor Hyman picking up Councillor Martin's role as court jester and stand-up comedian on this matter, it is a serious matter, and people care about it. So there is the element of it. I think what I'm hearing, and when I listening, was people are caring about it. They want to take it seriously, and I don't think the charter really, it's good intentions, but it's not really any sort of concrete policy, and it won't really have a lot of impact. And I think people would like it. What I'm hearing is that, you know, from Councillor Coburn and other members, is that they want it to be stronger, more protection, and do more. And I think that seems like a good thing. But yes, there is a massive cost, I imagine, right, if we're going to take it really seriously. But yeah, I'll vote for it. It's no problem.
Thank you. No other speakers? Oh, I beg your pardon. Councillor Townsend, Councillor Liz Townsend.
Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't going to speak on this either. However, I do have to draw members back to the remit of this charter, and it says it on page 61 of your report that it says charter focuses in particular on the remit of regulatory services where we do have powers, but it's also making it clear of the council's attitude and the council's desire to let residents know exactly what we feel about animal welfare within those regulatory services. It does make it clear that if it's going to have a broader charter, which we'll look at in the future, or West Surrey Council might, you know, obviously that would come with additional reports. You know, it's not just going to come to you and say, tick this. So, you know, I think that this sets a really good starting point. Who doesn't want to ensure that within our regulatory services that they're looking after animals and, you know, seeing their, you know, wanting, you know, the best welfare possible. You know, I'm afraid I can't deal with your foxes in the garden because I've got dogs myself. They eat disgusting things, whether there's foxes or not. That's just, you know, the way it goes. And fragmentation of our habitat is a serious problem. I agree, Councillor Coburn, but equally so is climate change. And, you know, that is really having the biggest impact on our heathlands and on our woodlands. And that is a serious, serious issue. And so, you know, I think that this is a starting point. And it's good for us to all say that we want animals to be treated well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mirrlees.
Yes, I'd like to agree with Councillor Townsend about that. This is a starting point. And I do think that, you know, initially we have to lay out what we feel about animals and be known as that as a council, because there are so many people in our borough, and it's a very wooded borough, so it does have some wildlife left, who care about that. If you go onto next door, you'll see it all the time. People who are saving swans, people who picked up all sorts of, you know, wounded animals, they care for them. Now, that's fine, we care for them. In time, hopefully, as you say, that can have some more muscle and we can have some money to put towards things and actually have something more actually profound that we can follow up. But at the moment, this is the beginning, and I think it's a very good beginning. And I think, you know, we should be thinking along these lines, not dismissing it, but thinking how we can in the future add to it. So I'm very much in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other speakers. Councillor Follows.
Thank you. Very quickly. It seems always very strange for somebody like me who's usually in favour of fairly expansive state intervention to be sort of reminding a few people that they have a lot of personal responsibilities and obligation when it comes to living in a rural area. Everywhere, even the more urban parts of our borough have issues with foxes and various other animals, and there is a certain level of personal responsibility. I also feel obliged not just to talk about the remit of this particular charter that you have in front of you, but just to also bring members back to what the remit of this council is. I am absolutely certain that Councillor Williams and certainly Councillor Townsend and probably a few others, if they were so minded, could write you an entire revision of national planning policy, and probably we could talk about it for a very long time, and probably it would do some things about habitats and about fragmentation of habitats and all of these other things that we definitely all care about, but we aren't able to do that because we don't set national planning policy. So one of the things I asked officers to do here, and with the support of the portfolio holder, was to make sure that if we are doing a limited form of this in order to introduce it to council activities, that it be in the department that has the most reach, the most impact in these areas, and we can make the most use of it on the ground. So I hope that this is a good balance as a starter for our intentions, particularly in a rural borough, but one that actually maximises the greatest intervention we can have in the department that really will hit this the most on the ground in reality. Yes, of course, it could be more. Yes, of course, we would like to do more. West Surrey certainly could do more because it will have the powers and the scope and the money. And more to the point, it will have the overlapping legal powers to address some of these things that an individual borough council can't do on its own. Of course, it will be broke. So obviously swings and roundabouts. So I commend this policy. I want to thank the officers who put the work into it. I do want to thank Councillor Williams and Councillor Juice for their work on the motion. And I think this is a reasonable policy for the borough that we are and the work that we want to try and do in a rural borough. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Councillor Juice.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, and thank you for all members for their feedback. I think one of the points I want to raise is that this, as mentioned for I think the 5th time, is a starting point. And I don't understand the perspective of this all or nothing perspective that is being mooted by some members. The idea behind this is that it will evolve and it will grow, and we will consider whether or not there will be other financial elements if there are finances to afford those elements. I was also slightly confused by some of the comments from Councillor Hyman in terms of, are we willing to take responsibility sitting here with judgment? If you read the Animal Welfare Charter as is, there are lots of already regulatory powers that we have and that we need to abide by. So this is nothing new. It is about framing what we already offer and looking at how we can develop it further. And I want to echo Councillor Merriweather's point that a lot of this is cultural. It's about changing people's attitudes towards wild animals and how much they care and how they care for domesticated animals. So I hope people can vote in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you. So you will have read the recommendation in your papers. When lights show, please vote. Thank you. That is carried with 31 in favour, 6 abstentions and 2 against. So we come to agenda item number 10, which is Strategic Community Infrastructure Levy Bidding Cycle 2025 to 2026. Are there any questions on clarity? Councillor Beaman.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. It's just a question that I note that under the 4 applications which were deemed as invalid, one of them was Potters Gate Primary School who applied for a new multi-use school hall at Potters Gate. And the reason given was project will not support development and aims to remedy any pre-existing deficiency. So you acknowledge the pre-existing deficiency, which is not evidence to be made more severe by new development. Yet for just down the road, in fact, it is the construction of around 320 new houses, the largest development in Farnham, and it seems that that hasn't been taken into account. Is that true?
I have to be careful not to stray into details that are exempt, the details of the bid or the details of the discussion. But the summary on page 52 of your pack is an accurate reflection of the evidence that was considered by the group.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on clarity? No. So Councillor Merriweather, would you like to introduce this?
I will, and I think I have a seconder.
Happy to second.
Right?
Yes, I will reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Councillor Merriweather.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the purpose of this report is primarily to approve the allocation of the additional £2,080,000 of strategic SIL funding towards the new Cranley Leisure Centre, which is set out in paragraph 6.23 of the report. But this resolution is the culmination of the 25-26 strategic SIL bidding round, which is the 6th round that we've had since SIL was adopted here in 2018. And the report presents a lot of useful background information for members on the process and the outcome of this round. It explains how we approve allocations under governance arrangements approved in 2019, which are consistent with the national SIL regulations 2010, as amended, which prescribe, amongst other things, what SIL can and can't be spent on and what eligibility criteria have to be satisfied. As with every other annual report that we produce, this one accounts for each and every bid we receive, regardless of whether that bid is successful. And there were 36 bids this year.
Not only have all of these bids come from across and outside of the borough, but they've also come from the broadest spectrum yet of applicants that we've always strived to expand. And that's not just us, the county council, town and parish councils, schools, the police, voluntary and community organisations, and especially welcome this time the NHS at both primary care and hospital levels. We started this round with just over £15.5 million of available strategic SIL, which was reduced to £14.5 million on the adoption of by this council of the neighbourhood SIL cap in February. Nearly £12 million of strategic SIL was allocated under executive approval back in March, leaving this one allocation for Cranley Leisure Centre tonight. Recommendations for approval are made by our cross-party executive working group, who met for 6 hours across 3 sessions earlier this year. But our work was nothing compared to the huge amount of work put in by Marissa and Claire and our entire team of officers who advise and support potential bidders, analyse bids and prepare them for consideration, and then follow up with bidders after the event, regardless of whether they're successful or not. But returning to the proposed Cranley Leisure Centre allocation, this bid was referenced in the very detailed project budget papers we considered at full council earlier in the year. And so I commend this final recommendation on SIL to council now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, this is great. There are winners and losers, as always, in this thing. £12 million spent of SIL, which is a great result, I think, right? And I also want to thank officers for their work on this, and also the committees who worked on this diligently. It's never easy, I imagine, to make decisions which you know are in and where you may be personally affected, you know, because you're in their ward or part of, you know, the people in them well, and you want to champion that. So I can understand it's difficult decisions. But I think looking at it, I'd just like a few highlights for the people of Farnham. So they've had road safety improvements at Highfield School, which is really, really important. Rowledge Village School has been having a new wellbeing centre, and we've also allocated 1 million for the Farnham LC Whip cycling and thingy, which hopefully will get its funding and get its go ahead and start moving along with that. So there's a really, really good. I think the additional 2.8 million for Cranley Leisure Centre, we added to the budget, so we all agreed, I think, that this is a well-funded project and it needs to go ahead. So I've got no problem with that. The only thing I did question is that part of the budget meeting about Cranley Leisure Centre was that there was going to be grant applications towards funding for this, for the thing. I'm just wondering whether there was any progress on those grants, and because if you got the grants, we wouldn't need the SIL. So I think that there was a question. That's my only question on that. But yeah. Thank you very much to all the officers and the SIL committees for the work they've done on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goodridge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to support the recommendations, and I'm very pleased, in particular, that the Arbuthnot Hall in Shamley Green has been successful in its bid. The people of Shamley Green have worked their socks off to raise money for their hall, which needs so much renovation to a building with history, and the monies that are being recommended will now enable the works to be done, which without it could not have been done. And therefore, I'm delighted that the council are agreeing to support that project. On the other hand, I'm slightly disappointed that we are needing to spend over 4 million in Sill for the Cranley Leisure Centre. The extra 2 million as a result really of costings getting out of hand, as we've debated earlier in the previous council meeting. So I'm disappointed with that, but still, nevertheless, I'm keen to ensure the leisure centre is built. So if this is the only way it can be done, then so be it. But thank you very much for from the people of Shamley Green for the money going to their hall.
Thank you. We have a little list. We have Kevin, Councillor Denis, Councillor Follows, Councillor Gale. So Councillor Denis next.
Thank you very much. So both Councillor Jane Austen and myself have met with the applicants of the Arbuthnot Hall many times over the last 12 months and supported by Councillor Goodridge and Jeremy Hunt, so we're very grateful. So Arbuthnot Hall's been serving the residents now for 120 years. It's part of the fabric of the community, and it's for generations of people who have benefited from the facilities. But after 120 years, I think it's fair to say the hall is tired, it's worn out, and it's not really fit for purpose. So without this investment, it will not serve future generations. And being in a rural location, there are many pockets of social isolation. And with poor infrastructure and public transport, facilities such as this is a social lifeline. So I think we are all here today extremely proud, supporting not only this, but all of the applications. So throughout the process, I've met such a dedicated team of volunteers, as been mentioned by my colleague, who have displayed commitment and professionalism in their submission. This is a credit to them and the residents. So being a councillor can be challenging, and you're often in the firing line. Today, it reminds me of why I became a councillor, and that's to do the right thing for our communities who need help, and to develop communities so they have a community spirit and identity. So in future, when this project has been built and is being used, I think we can all be proud that we've played a very small part in this project. This is a community asset for the community by its community. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Follows.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I also want to pay tribute to the officers who constructed this report, but also to the members who put in quite a lot of time dealing with, I think, some very complex issues at the end of the day. Rather than speak about the excellent applications in my own patch in Godalming and Milford and Whitley, as far as I'm concerned, Waverley residents as a whole benefit here across the board. I'm incredibly pleased to see some NHS applications for the first time, particularly as someone with parents who've suffered through cancer at least 4 times, to see the upgrades to the chemotherapy and other wards at the Royal Surrey be done through this process is absolutely fantastic. I'm also extremely pleased, though not because it was easy, to see some Surrey County Council applications here for some of the roads and some of the other more complicated areas. It has to be said, we have been nagging Surrey County Council to actually submit good quality SIL applications now for years. Even some of these did, however, require continuous help from the county councillors for those patches to make sure that the appropriate amount of information was supplied, so that, for example, even things such as highways drawings for some of the applications were actually submitted along with the applications. So it's good to see, but it took, I think, a lot of people a lot more work than it should have done. This is obviously the penultimate round of SIL that Waverley Borough Council will ever spend. The last one will be next year before Waverley dissolves, assuming we can get it in time. It is my hope that everybody in this room will work with the organisations that they know and want to support in Waverley to ensure that the last SIL round of money is spent in Waverley. That is something that I hope is something I can say to everybody here cross-party. That money was raised against development in Waverley. It is not nearly enough to deal with all the infrastructure demands of even Waverley, let alone West Surrey. But I think we all will hopefully stand together in ensuring that that money is all spent here in Waverley. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was really pleased to actually be on the committee that sat for 6 hours looking at all the bids that came in, and it was very interesting actually. But first of all, I think we ought to all thank Marissa and her team, because the work that they put in to actually bring those bids to that committee was really in depth, and it made it easier for us to make a decision. I'd also thank them because personally, being a parish councillor, I know that she's on hand to help parish councils with neighbourhood SIL queries, and that's really welcome. In my own ward, I'm very pleased to see there are a couple of things that did actually get past the finish line. I was really pleased to work with Surrey County Council actually on one of them, because it was a tricky one, caused some amusement when we were going through the papers to start with, but we got there in the end. And I too am really pleased to see that the Royal Surrey were actually on board, and the explanation they gave to the team when we were looking at it was second to none. And we all learnt an awful lot that day, I think, as well. So I'm really proud that we're doing this. I think this is the sort of thing we should be doing, and maybe next year we'll get some more, and then hopefully it'll go on into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keel.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. My thanks to you, to officers and members, for all of their hard work on this. It's clear just how much work has gone into this process. As others have said, it's fantastic to see so many worthwhile bids. As one of the local ward members for the Arons Hill and Oxford Ridge area of Godalming, I'm extremely pleased to see the successful bid of the Arons Hill recreation ground, skate bike park and green space improvements, and the impact this will have on the local area for both the immediate neighbours in Arons Hill and Oxford Ridge and more widely will be huge. The delivery of new leisure facilities for our community will be a huge boost for local people in terms of their health and well-being and enjoyment of where they live. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hyman.
Thank you. Yes, it is very good to see, as the leader has said, the NHS bids, because this, I think, is what CIL, as far as we were concerned when it was coming through in 2018. It was an opportunity with sort of £90 million coming in for us to be able to address significant issues that come along with huge increases in population. I think there's a little bit of a missed opportunity there. It's just the way the system is. I don't think there's any criticism whatsoever of our officers in respect of how they've judged this. Really, the idea that it has to support development. A lot of things have been refused because. I mean, I don't agree with the judgment on Potter's Gate because there's so many new kids going to be moving into that area, and the school there does need help. But it's a huge burden on developers, CIL is, and we have to be able to turn around really and say, look, we've solved these infrastructure problems with the money that we've taken from you, rather than where we've given a little bit here and kept everybody in the world happy so we get more votes and all the rest of it, which is perhaps a slightly skewed way of looking at it, but that's what some residents and people might think. And there's, in some ways you can understand why. We do have to make sure. I think it's a missed opportunity. My own particular bugbear here, of course, is trying to drive into and around Farnham, because Surrey County Council did not go for the what I'd always fought for and residents had always asked for, which was alternative routes first before gridlocking Farnham. We need those alternative routes paying for. With £90 million, that would be a huge chunk towards Highways England, sorting out the bypass. We want these things doing. So hopefully in the next bid round, what we've got to do is make sure we get our act together, so that if there are big areas elsewhere that need chunks of 10 or 20 million pounds, and so that we use up what money we've got before Woking try and soak it up for us, or whatever. But let's make sure that we've got these things on the table. For everything from lighting for a skate park in Farnham, which we've been asking for years, that's 50 to 20 grand. We need that, but also those big projects. Let's make sure that we're doing this in future, so that we can be proud of where this money's been spent, and we can say, look, we've addressed those issues. Thanks.
Thank you. I don't see any other speakers. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you very much. I'd also like to thank the working group for all their hours, not only the 6 hours in the actual meetings, but obviously there's an awful lot of reading as well to do. And I also would like to clarify that the members of the working group do not vote on bids that are in their own areas. So talks about championing votes and things that does not happen. We are very, very strict about the way things are done, and every single application is considered on exactly the same level as every other application. And as to getting our act together, we have to deal with the applications from infrastructure providers that are submitted. We can't make them up. If there's a big infrastructure needed, then the officers are really proactive at seeking bids, but we cannot force people to submit bids. So if a bid doesn't come in, we cannot allocate money to a spurious road building programme that doesn't exist. I'm very pleased, obviously, to see the bids in my own area for Cranley Cricket Club. Also, I cover Ewhurst as a county councillor, and also, obviously, the Cranley Leisure Centre project. That was unanimously supported, as were the other projects within the working group. And there's still a bit of undercurrent of like it's too expensive or whatever than that. And it's important that we do focus on the facts in this. The fact that is that this is an income generating asset. The approved scheme is forecast to deliver, as we've had in our papers before, about £450,000 a year, and it currently costs us £26,000 a year, and that would only go up if we didn't do anything. So it's a positive contributor. And, talks about Passive House and goodness knows what that were put there before. Goodness me, isn't it good that we're going for an energy efficient leisure centre? Look at the state of the energy market at the moment, the volatility. This will reduce our energy use by approximately 60%. And so that will save money as well for this council. And, it's really important that we build a new leisure centre for Cranley. We know what the state of the existing leisure centre is. We've invested in other leisure stock across the borough. So, I don't take it that the costs have got out of hand or whatever was said behind. We've seen steel gone up 40%. In the last few weeks, steel's gone up by another 20%. This is nothing to do with Waverley or the management of projects. This is to do with the world and an international market. And we have to be realistic here about the impact of inflation on our projects. And this is exactly, these type of projects, and the Leisure Centre project is exactly what SIL was intended for. It's about supporting growing communities, things that support health, well-being, and the increased demand for leisure as well within this area. So it is exactly what SIL was required for. And, I think it's really important that we are that we make sure that in all the information that goes out to our residents, that we are clear that that the SIL that we receive, we allocate once a year. We allocate all the funds once a year. So, and I think it's really important that the residents know that we have a very robust and rigorous process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Merriweather.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Townsend. The recommendation here really is focused on Cranley Leisure Centre, but I should stress that the allocation of SIL, of strategic SIL, to Cranley Leisure Centre and all of the projects that are in this report has to be done within the letter of the SIL regulations. And they are all assessed on exactly the same criteria, and we've reproduced those scoring criteria for you as an appendix. Every single bid is assessed within the constraints of the law, the regulations, and against this scoring criteria. That is how it's done. And I do think I think we all understand what an awesome job the officers have done. I actually want to thank the members of the working group as well. It's a cross-party working group, and for me it was a real pleasure behind closed doors to have constructive, really engaged, informed discussions led by professional officers who know what they're doing. To bring us to the consensus that we came to on every single one of these. So just specifically to respond to Councillor Hyman, there's very little judgment actually that goes into this process. If you understand the regulations and you understand the scoring criteria, the projects tend to score themselves. And there's, but still having said that, it's a, it's a process where we feel that we work very, very hard. Every single one of these, particularly the wheat ones, we work very, very hard to try and find a way to spend the money. And as far as the unitary coming is concerned, of course, not all of the combining districts and boroughs even have SIL. Some still have old-fashioned Section 106 arrangements. So who knows how this is all going to pan out. What I would say is that we have one more round coming. It is an exempt group. It is a confidential group, but any councillor, any member here is entitled and invited to come and attend. We did have a handful come along specifically to observe the discussions that we had on projects that they were interested in. And I think everybody who came along to see the discussions appreciated how thoroughly and how professionally and how constructively we handled it. So on that note, back to Crandy Leisure Centre, I commend the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. So you have the recommendation in your papers. When lights show, please vote. That is carried unanimously.
Yes. One person hasn't voted. Just want to check.
One person hasn't voted.
It's carried by 38 in
Yeah,
favour.
it is carried.
Okay.
So we come to agenda item number 11, which is the leader of the opposition group. Are there any questions? None. Councillor MacLeod, I believe where's Councillor MacLeod? I believe you are leading this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And you have a seconder?
Yes, I have a seconder,
Councillor
Councillor
Yes.
Nicholson.
I was
on
just
this item.
second and I reserve my right to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say an introduction to this item that I'll be introducing 7 items this evening. And as I usually like to do, I like to reassure members that all these items have been fully discussed and debated and in some cases amended by the Waverley and Guildford Joint Constitutions Review Group and subsequently by the Joint Standards Committee. So they're all coming to you as recommendations from the Joint Standards Committee. In terms of this specific item, I think it's a fairly simple issue actually. What it's dealing with is that if the council decides at its annual meeting to formally appoint a leader of the opposition, who that person should be. And the recommendation is fairly simple, that if there's an opposition group that's bigger than all the other opposition group, it would be the leader of that group. But secondly, if there are 2 or more opposition groups that are equal in numbers, that the role and the responsibilities and any allowance that goes with it should be shared equally. So it would be a joint opposition group, opposition leaders who do it jointly. So it's a fairly simple recommendation. So I wish to pass that back to you, Madam Mayor, for any debate on the subject.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I've got no issue with this policy. Seems a sensible arrangement, especially in case I succumb to post-election stress syndrome and something happens to me in the next few months. Who knows? And it would have, but I think it would have been nice to have been consulted on it. No one asked me about it. I'm not so sure, but maybe that's the rules that Councillor Austin and I have probably got a vested interest in whatever it was. So maybe that's the reason why we weren't asked what we thought about it. But anyway, it's fine. I think it does provide clarity And it does give any future or any other opposition leader flexibility to agree arrangements among themselves if that's the case. But thank you very much. I've got no problem with this and I will support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Follows.
We obviously had to resolve a similar issue at Surrey, where for a brief moment my group was the joint largest in opposition. That obviously is no longer the case, so it resolved itself. In my role as leader of opposition of the county, I usually make it my business to check what's going on in the other committees, and I don't think it would have been appropriate for officers to ask your specific views, or Jane's, Councillor Austin's, my apologies, on this, because it's about the role, not the individual people. You could have, of course, gone to any one of the, I want to say, 3 potentially opportunities where it's come up for discussion. So I think, though, the way that this has been drafted is actually far better than the Surrey version of the same policy, where large administration groups are actually prorated, even if one is bigger than the other, which I don't think is particularly fair. But then again, I've got a vested interest in that because it's more about the role than it is about the incumbents. Yes, this is, I think, as I'm sure the chair of standards will state, has been through at least 2 levels of public meetings where this could have been discussed by any member. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any ready to second?
Yes, I second it. No, I do welcome this item, and as I do with the 5 following, I think it's been very helpful to update and strengthen the Constitution and make clear as many points as possible. And this could well be used as a template for the future West Surrey Authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor MacLeod, do you wish to say anything further?
Nothing to add, Madam
No.
Mayor, thank you.
So you have the recommendation in front of you, and when lights show, please vote. That is carried unanimously. So we come to agenda item number 12, which is member questions at meetings. Are there any questions on clarity? No. Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And do you have a seconder?
Yes, again,
You
Councillor
do?
Nicholson, Madam Mayor.
Over to you, Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, again. Again, this is a reasonably straightforward item as well. The reason why this item is introduced is that our council procedure rule number 12 allows 30 minutes for questions with unlimited number of questions from any member. And it felt in the interest of fairness that should be restricted actually to, we should cap the number of questions per councillor to 2 questions per councillor. And there's additional suggestions about supplementary questions, which I won't, they're explained in the paper. So that's the basic reason that we're introducing these recommendations. And that's all I wish to say about it, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any speakers? Councillor Williams.
Yeah, I'm acutely aware of the fact that the last full council meeting, I asked 4 questions. And therefore, I would have been in breach of this proposed rule. And on this occasion, I am asking no questions. So it's actually about context. So I don't feel that I'm able to support the proposed changes this evening. I do understand the rationale that's been set out, particularly the desire to ensure fairness and make good use of the time available and the limited time that is available for member questions. I mean, those are all entirely reasonable objectives. However, I do think that the measure that is being proposed is disproportionate to what is in reality a manageable issue. I think member questions are one of the most important democratic mechanisms that we have for transparency and accountability, particularly for those not in a leadership position. The ability of councillors to raise issues openly in this forum is a core part of how the administration holds itself to account. So I am concerned that introducing this strict cap on questions alongside tighter controls on how questions are framed limits that scrutiny in practice, particularly where members are seeking to explore complex issues. And there were a lot at the previous council meeting, and at this meeting there were none. So I would also note that recent increases in questions needs to be understood in context, including the constraints that come with, well, yeah, I mean, essentially, I mean, I support the aim of fairness. So I don't think we've struck the right balance in this proposal. I'll be voting against it this evening. I'd urge executive to reconsider these proposals and bring a revised paper back to council following further reflection to ensure that we do not unintentionally curtail legitimate democratic scrutiny. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hyman.
Thank you. And in some ways, I have a diametrically opposite view to Councillor Williams, because I'm from the old school who, for 15 or 20 years in this chamber, was only allowed to ask one question. Came along here regularly, could only ask one question. We did have informal questions, which was useful at times, but you wouldn't get an answer on the night anyway, because it was an unexpected question and no one would, and then you ask an awkward question, you're not going to get an answer there and then. What this should be about is not about the ability to ask questions. Actually, it should be about the ability to get an answer, to get a straight answer to the question that is asked. And that is where we have to concentrate as we move into West Surrey Council, because it's going to be more distant. It's going to be more, more separated away from residents. A lot less councillors. It's got to be a lot more efficient. It's got to be easy for someone to ask a question and to get a straight answer, whether it is in public. Now, we don't have all night for lots of people to turn up asking lots and lots of questions and expect answers. We can't spend an hour of a council meeting just answering questions, and we can't be expected to. Why does a councillor need to ask two questions? And as we know, we have had people asking 4 questions, whatever. Well, I always thought one question, 2 minutes to ask it. That's it. That's what it came down to. We were originally allowed 4 minutes. You could give a good introduction with that, but that was reduced down to down to 2 minutes, because I used the full 4 minutes. I was a bit naughty, as you can imagine. So, yeah, it was reduced to 2 minutes, and all of a sudden everything had changed with the, I don't know, marrying our constitution to Guildford or something like that. All of a sudden people were able to do whatever they wanted and ask thousands of questions, and we ended up with spending ages on question sessions. It shouldn't be that way. The questions should be targeted, and we should get answers, and that's what it's really down to. And we should be able to get these straight answers also in writing through the system, and that's where I have a difficulty after 20 years. The difficulty is still there, getting answers to straight questions. I support this reduction to 2 questions. I greatly differ to Councillor Williams on that. I think 2 is plenty for any individual. Ask somebody else to ask a question. If it's a good question, they'll do it for you. We have to make sure we get answers. This is about accountability. We're told we've got accountability. We've got to make sure for West Surrey that what we've got in our constitution going forwards will be taken up hopefully by West Surrey, because it's already a joint constitution, that it gives us answers to questions. It's not a question of how many questions you can ask. You can ask them out of the chamber. We want answers to the questions, and we want accountability when people won't answer questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Follows.
I've always found that when I ask a relatively short and direct question of officers, I get usually a short, direct and honest answer back from officers as well. Just to clarify something that Councillor Williams mentioned, these are not recommendations of the executive. They are the papers and proposals of the Standards Committee that we are all voting on as members of the council. One of the few things at Surrey, and it's a bit of a dichotomy, is that there are lots of elements, particularly in the management of full council, which I actually think are very, very good. Don't get me wrong, I take considerable issue sometimes with how the constitution at Surrey is actually applied on the ground. But one of the things that does work quite well is the structures of meetings, and they get through quite a lot more business in quite a lot less time than we do here. We have by far and away the longest average meeting time of almost any borough council, probably in the south of England, but certainly in Surrey. And one of the things I hear frequently from members of other councils and who are candidates in this coming election is that why on earth does Waverley Borough Council take twice as long to do anything as anybody else in the whole county? And one of the reasons it does is because there are elements of our constitution that just don't help. So what I think the Standards Committee are trying to do here, and I think it's a very worthwhile endeavour and something that I hope West Surrey will also pick up, is just trying to make the structure of our full council meetings a bit more sensible, a bit more robust, a bit more direct to the point. Just because you've got 4 minutes doesn't mean you need to use it. Just because you can ask infinite questions doesn't mean you're going to. But actually, there is a point where that can get silly, and this is just dealing with potentially some extremes that could exist. I think it's just a management practice. The best will in the world, the words of a constitution, are meaningless unless the members understand it and treat it sensibly and use it properly and have officers that do the same thing. We have officers here that do that. We, I think, as members could be a bit better at adhering to the rules of our constitution and its spirit and its principles. I count myself among that group, by the way, as well. And at that point, considering what I've just said, I'll stop with 2 minutes to go.
Thank you. I think there are two other speakers. Councillor Davidson, you're the next one.
Thank you, Mayor. I must say I'm with Councillor Williams. I abhor any attempt to try and constrain the openness and ability of councillors to ask and represent their constituency. So I find this guillotine type of approach to managing our activities in our full council sessions abhorrent, as indeed I found the use of the guillotine in the revolution of some 150 years ago. No, I cannot support this.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm rather inclined to support Councillor Williams on this. I think it is a constraint on members if we're not allowed to ask questions. I think it's a reasonable constraint to say 30 minutes and the meeting will be devoted to questions, but I see no reason why members should not be able to put in multiple questions. And as he rightly said, it depends on the context. In one particular meeting, there may be an area of significant concern where more than 2 questions is really quite justifiable and relevant. And in other meetings, there may be none at all. And I think it's a backward step to say you can't ask more than 2 questions. It's getting more and more difficult to ask questions in this council, in my experience, both for members and for ordinary residents. And I just think this is another step along to make it more difficult. And I would like to see it made less difficult, not more difficult. So I have to say, I'm with Councillor Williams on this. I think we need to think about this again, and I will vote against. Thank you.
Thank you. There are 2 other speakers, Councillor Murray and then Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I wanted to listen, and I hadn't made my mind up about this at all, really, because it is you want to make it easy and you want to make it efficient, and you don't want to waste a lot of time. We've all sat here, till 11 o'clock at night on a number of occasions over the last year or so in quite long debates. So I can absolutely saw that. When I read it first, I thought, okay, well, this all makes very good sense. But then listening to Councillor Williams and Councillor Davidson and Councillor Martin and a few others, yeah, I'm uncomfortable with trying to curtail members' debate. It goes against why I'm here and what I would support. So I'm conflicted on this one. I don't think I can support it in the way it is. I think 30 minutes is absolutely fine. You just say, right, okay, this is the amount allocated, and I think that's what happens at Surrey. If I'm not wrong, they have a time limit on members' statements and questions, and there's a great big list of questions, and if you don't finish those questions in time, then time's up, right? And I think the chair says, I'm sorry, but the time's up, no more questions. So I think that what that does really well is makes the questions very quick. People get up and then get off, you know what I mean? Which is probably a good thing. So I think that 30-minute thing would focus people's attentions quicker, members to get their question quick. but I can't support it in its full way. But I understand the intention, but I'm uncomfortable with the curtailing of members' rights to speak and ask questions.
Thank you, Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I agree with Councillor Murray, actually, and Councillor Williams. I don't think there should be a limit on the number of questions that anyone is allowed to bring. I do think the time limit is good, though, for a meeting to say question time is up, and that would possibly make people ask questions a little bit quicker. I don't understand why we ended up with all written questions and written answers, because we used to have people put questions and they were given an answer verbally in the chamber, which I thought made a good idea. That was a good idea because people are watching this on YouTube or whatever it is they watch on, and they would actually hear the question. Whereas if you haven't had the paperwork, you haven't read the question, you haven't read the answer, which then makes it very difficult to follow when somebody says, do you have a supplementary question, which is then verbal, which could mean absolutely nothing to the people that are listening because they've no idea what the first question was in the first place. So I don't think I can vote for it because, yes, I don't think we should curb members' questions. I think it is the place where people should come to be able to ask questions. So I don't think I can vote on this tonight. Sorry.
Madam Mayor, may I propose an amendment to this motion? Listening to the debate, and actually, well, I haven't read the amendment out for somebody to second, but I, having seen this as a member of the executive as opposed to a member of the Standards Committee, I agree with members that there should not be a limit on questions submitted, but I do support the fact that there is a limit within the meeting to discuss them. And I would like to propose that the paper continues to say that there is, with the limits proposed for discussing them, but that there is no cap for members to submit them or receive written responses. I think, having listened to the debate here and at Standards, I would so propose that amendment.
We're going to have a 2-minute adjournment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Susan. Yeah, Susan first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to draw members' attention to Article 14 of the Constitution, which in summary provides that there shouldn't be any change made to the Constitution without it coming via a recommendation from the Standards Committee. So I think in this scenario, although the Standards Committee have considered the wider issues, if there is going to be an alternative proposal, it would be prudent for the Standards Committee to have an opportunity to reconsider that and bring back further recommendations to full council. And I believe Councillor Follis may wish to make a change to his
May I?
proposal.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Monitoring Officer. If I may withdraw my amendment proposal and subsequently propose a deferral of this item back to standards so that this debate could be had there, I will also attend that meeting myself in order to communicate the issues that have been raised at council. It will then, once going through that, be raised back here. I believe it would also require it going via the JCRG as well. But if I can so motion that deferral, and I believe I have a seconder.
Seconded.
Yeah.
Can I speak? It's a perfectly reasonable motion. It's perfectly understandable. It is very simple. Why refer it back? Why dither? Why delay? We either agree with it or we don't. So we vote yes or no tonight.
Amendment has been withdrawn.
The amendment has been withdrawn. And the deferral has been agreed. Sorry, David. So we will move to agenda item 13, which is amendments to the petition scheme. Are there any questions on clarity? Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I find the layout is a little bit confusing. And I do wish we could get it more clearly identified. There are 4 appendices. Appendix 1 is the Guildford petition scheme. Appendix 2, which is on page 105, is in fact Appendix 2, but it doesn't say it's Appendix 2. It just says Part 4.9, which is the Waverley petition scheme. Appendix 3 is clear on page 111, but Appendix 4 on page 113 doesn't say it's Appendix 4. And it says it's part 4.9. I worked out what was what, but I just wish it could be laid out a little more clearly so that simple people like me would more readily understand what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. No other questions? Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And do you have a second of your proposed?
Okay.
And do you reserve your right to? Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor. This again is probably a slightly less, slightly not quite such a simple issue as some of the others. The reason this has come to the council is really for 2 reasons. One is that the council changed its petition threshold in May 2025, which has resulted in more petitions potentially coming to full council. And as we discovered actually in January, where a petition did come to full council, there was some confusion really about how it should be dealt with. I think it's fair to say that. And the recommendations before you is to ensure that when petitions come before full council, it's fully worked out how they should be dealt with. And that's the recommendations before you this evening. So I'll leave it at that for the moment, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm particularly pleased that the Standards Committee, the Executive and the Monitoring Officer and everybody involved moved very quickly to improve the petitions policy. As Councillor MacLeod has recognised, that the recent SIL Group's petition was not very satisfactory, to put it mildly, I think. I think we all agreed it wasn't great. And, you know, what I really appreciate is that the Monitoring Officer and the JCRG have tried to make it more responsive and clearer for petitioners to get a fair hearing. I really like that. I particularly like 10.4, which says, councillors will also be given the opportunity to ask questions of the petition organiser or any person authorised by them. So I thought that was really good. And after any questions, there will be a debate on the petition in accordance with paragraph 11. And paragraph 11 says, the petition shall be the subject of a debate by the council before any formal response is moved. And it says quite clearly that it must respond explicitly to the request in the petition. And I think that was what my beef with the whole thing last time. And we, you know, it wasn't clear how the debate would have been actually formed, and it had to be the portfolio holder would have to come up with a motion, not the person. So that was my problem with it. But what I really like is that it gives the petition, the public who are here to do a petition, it gets their voice out. We talk about the actual element of what they're petitioning about, and it creates its own motion. So that, for me, is a really good part of it. So I will fully support it. Thank you very much to the committee and to all the officers involved in that, for moving it very quickly and for doing it on the side of the public, which was very important. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Follows.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the two stages of this, I mean, when I first looked at the petition scheme a little while back, and standards then did too, to see how off kilter our thresholds were with other councils, I have to say I found quite distasteful. And so we made those adjustments. We knew doing that would probably mean that for the first time we would actually get a reasonable number of petitions. We have had a couple, I think, since then. I do think that we did debate the last one in full in terms of its contents, but even straight after that meeting, I think one of the first things the monitoring officer and I discussed was how that didn't really work very well as a debate. And that actually the lack of clarity in the constitution and the procedures about petitions was something that was probably not acceptable, particularly as we were likely to get more petitions coming through. So very grateful to the monitoring officer and to the JCRG and the standards committee for taking that so seriously and for dealing with it so quickly. I think what we've got here is far better. It's far better for members to understand what's going on when a petition comes through. It's far better for the members of the public to understand what will happen if they push a petition in. And I think it will mean a more sensible debate in the room where everybody understands what's going on. Whilst I think last time was technically okay, I don't think it was satisfactory for the petitioner, and it was confusing for all of us in the room. This should correct both. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, just very briefly, one of the things I miss about the local committee was the petitions that we had at local committee. It was always very well structured, and the people knew they were going to get an answer. And so the petitions gradually became, well, I say gradually became more sensible. They were always sensible. But, you know, people understood that if there was something that was really dear to their heart and they got a petition together, something would happen. And it did happen. And I think it was one of the highlights of the meeting. We all enjoyed listening to the petitioner. We all enjoyed the fact the petition was genuinely handed in, genuinely debated, and we had a follow-up to it. As to what happened. So it's a bit like the point raised by Councillor Hyman to questions. In many ways, the answers are more important than, you know, what is asked. It's the way we answer these things. So I think this is an improvement. I hope people take it up, and I'm sure there are many causes that will benefit from being highlighted in a petition to us in this very chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Goodrich.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, as a member of the Joint Constitution Committee and the Joint Standards Committee, it was important that we did rectify the situation that existed when we had the petition on SIL. I think a lot of us were very unhappy on the way that happened, with the petitioner in effect being hijacked by a motion, and therefore this will rectify that problem. Probably because of the length of the council that remains, 11 months, it will never actually see the light of day in reality, but at least we're prepared if one should miraculously appear before us. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gale. And then
I just wondered if I'm reading this correctly. If if the petition got referred to another committee, would it actually come back to council after that, or will that committee or the executive make a final decision? I just can't find that that's very clear here, so sorry about that, but maybe somebody can clarify.
Thank you. Was that a question? Councillor Hyman.
Yes, that is a genuine question, actually. There's a number of us want to know the answer to that, because obviously we don't want to go into the same message last time, as it's going to go back through the system to standards and come back to us again in order to get that sorted and added into it. But so it is an important thing. We want to know whether it's in here. Does it go to executive, or in effect is the council delegating it to another committee, which seems an odd thing to do. I don't know whether John Ward's going to pick up on that, because I think he'd mentioned it to one of our members of the group. My issue is on page 95, at the very top. Paragraph 6.3, where it says a petition at a recent council meeting at WBC was dealt with by way of the mayor suspending procedure rules to allow debate and motion amendment on a petition. That's not what happened. You Madam Mayor, did not suspend procedure rules. In fact, when I questioned it, and Councillor Ward questioned it as well, we were given a particular reference in the Constitution as to what that applied as being the justification for how it was being done. And when I then questioned that a little bit later with officers, I was then referred to another part, and none of it stacked up. But you did not suspend the procedure rules to allow debate. And I am very concerned when we get a document in front of us that's in effect rewriting history.
Councillor Hyman.
And so I just want that to be.
Councillor Hyman. We're talking about history, whereas we're talking about the future.
I'm talking about a statement that's in the document in front of us, put there as a statement of fact, which I would like the minutes to record, please. That 6.3 is not necessarily a proper recollection of the facts. I do not like the fact that we've got something in here which says that something was done properly, when in actual fact at the time according to the Constitution, it wasn't. Or that something happened that didn't happen in the meeting. The procedure rules were not. At no time in that meeting did you say, I am suspending the procedure rules to allow it to be debated. In fact, we were told that it was in line with the Constitution. So that's my issue here. I think we have to make sure the facts and that things are not factually correct, are not carried forward in posterity as being a correct statement. So that's why I'm raising it here, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I don't know if Councillor Hyman can clarify. I think he said paragraph 6.3 of the report, which I believe is factually correct and refers to a discussion at the Joint Constitution Review Group. There isn't a paragraph 6.3 in the amended version, and I'm not sure that 6.3 in the report is correct.
I refer to page 95. May I refer you back to page 95 as a point of personal explanation? Thank you, Madam Mayor. 6.3 at the top. I apologise, I hadn't noticed there were two lots of 6.1, 2, 3 foot and everything else, but that wasn't my fault either.
Yeah, I'm afraid, Madam Mayor, I don't think we can deal with that this evening without going back to the recording and checking the facts. But the recollection of officers is that is correct. But we would have to check the minutes and the recording of the last meeting to confirm that.
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, since my name has been quoted, I suppose I better speak. We've had quite a lot of sort of standards talk today, and one might be sort of tempted to say, oh, we've only got 11 months left. Why are we messing around with this? Is this moving chairs on the Titanic? But I think, in fact, it isn't. When we first thought about getting closer ties to Guildford, one of the things which we were in fear of was the Surrey County Council rush to the mass unitary And one of our reasons for getting closer was to try and form a nucleus of the unitary, which we thought was coming. In fact, we were convinced was coming. So I think actually we're doing the right thing by trying to get our two constitutions together. Referring to the first of the duo of 6.3s on page 95, it does refer to our last meeting, and frankly, that was probably the lowest point in my experience of Waverley. It was appalling. And I thank the officers for picking that up and doing something about it very quickly. One of the demands or hopes that was raised earlier more than once is we want to get answers. And when a petitioner comes, they are hoping, and I think they are right to expect, an answer from the council, because they have provided the minimum number of signatures and got through our procedures, and they've brought it to the council. So there are a lot of good things in what is in this report, in that the petitioner can present the petition, which actually our constitution said before will be discussed. But that was chucked out of the window at the last meeting, and I think that was one of the shames we'll have to live with. But one of the things that I am uncomfortable with has been alluded to by Councillor Gale, that this new wording does give the council the right basically to refer it to the executive or another committee and effectively chuck it into the long grass. Well, the long grass is actually getting quite busy over the last few months of this council, and I wouldn't like to see any more going in. So, I mean, I find if we turn to page 118, if we look at little c at the top there, referring this petition to officers with a request that a further report be provided to an appropriate meeting of the council sounds wonderful. But then it goes on leader, executive, overview and scrutiny committee, or any other committee, or a meeting even, not even a committee, that the council considers appropriate. That is long grass time. And if that stays in there, I cannot support this, and I really would like to support it because I think it's doing some good. And D does much the same, basically refers the petition elsewhere. So yes, could I propose an amendment, Madam Mayor, that on item C on that page, all after meeting of the council be struck, and little d be struck in its entirety? And I don't know if I have a seconder, but may I propose that we send it back to standards with that recommendation, pedantically then?
Would you be so kind as to clarify what it is you are trying to amend on page 118, please?
With pleasure, Madam Mayor. Page 118, little c. The sentence reads, refer the petition to officers with a request that a further report to be provided to an appropriate meeting of the council. I would like to insert a full stop there and remove the rest of the wording in little c completely, as I do not wish it to go to any meeting or committee. I think the aim of this is that petitioners get an answer from the council, and I think they have every right to, and I think that was generally the thrust of what was being done. Hence, little d, I believe, should be removed in its entirety. So in other words, the council can say, let's have another report and let's consider it later, but the onus should be on the council to provide an answer to the petitioner, which I think actually was the whole point of putting this thing together.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
And you've had a seconder.
point of order on the amendments wording. Is it possible for, considering that there's executive function here, is it possible to remove the power to refer it to the executive, bearing in mind council isn't competent to actually report on executive function?
Point is to refer it back, isn't it?
So, thank you, Madam Mayor. There's a few issues come up that I think actually need professional officer advice to be able to deal with this amendment. So the first point I would make is that the current petition scheme allows referrals to committees. This isn't a significant change, Councillor Ward, in that the current arrangements are that petitions can be referred from the council to the committee in whose remit the matter would lie. The second point is that in terms of executive functions, full council can't take away the powers of the executive and overrule them. So if a matter in a petition was within the remit of the executive, it would have to be considered by the executive. But I think officers would like to consider your proposals more carefully and have the opportunity to give professional officer advice on them rather than being put on the spot to advise on this amendment this evening. So it may be that if councillors feel strongly that they want to propose it to go back to the Standards Committee again for a further report for the Standards Committee to consider the implications.
May I just answer one point, monitoring officer? Yes, I agree with you that the current or the previous constitution allows that, but we are seeking to improve it, and we've already said we don't like what it says and it's not right. So if I take on board your advice, then presumably a proposal to refer it back to standards is the way to go forward. Would that be reasonable? Would you stop interrupting people just for once, leader?
So Councillor Ward, do you withdraw your amendment, which has been seconded by Councillor Gale? But you withdraw
If someone will propose a motion to put it back to standards, I will withdraw it thereafter, yes.
it would be then referred back to. So you have to withdraw your amendment first.
I will rephrase my amendment that it should be referred back to standards. How's that?
And is that seconded?
Consent of the seconder and consent of council to amend the amendment.
And is that the wish of council to?
Madam Mayor, I think we need to speak on this because one of the original questions was, if it gets referred back, will it then come back to council again? And that's not being.
It's really nice.
No.
So, Madam Mayor, if I can just clarify where we are.
No, not this one.
No, Hank, Councillor Hyman.
If I can just clarify for all councillors where we are. We had a proposed amendment from Councillor Ward. Councillor Ward has changed his amendment and has the consent of the seconder and the consent of the council to change his amendment. So the amendment that is before you now is to refer the matter back to the Standards Committee, and it is now the opportunity to debate on that proposal and to then take a vote on it if councillors wish to.
There are at least 3 hands. Are you wanting to debate? Councillor Goodrich.
Yes, I just want to point out on deferrals, we're going to end up probably with the constitution of Waverley being different than Guildford, because I don't know, but I suspect Guildford has already passed it. Just so that people are aware of that, because I know a lot of people are frightfully keen to ensure the 2 councils have the same constitution. And we seem to be going down a route now, both of this one and the previous one, to ensure that they're different. Thank you.
Good point. Councillor Williams and then Councillor Merriweather.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Very briefly, I don't really see that there is a problem here because the whole issue is about a petition going to council for debate. And, you know, that paragraph 11, the council will decide how to respond to the petition at the meeting. And one assumes that council will therefore debate the issue and make a decision. And there's therefore responding to the petition. So I really don't see a problem at all with the text as it stands.
Councillor Merriweather.
Well, I agree with Councillor Williams wholeheartedly. In fact, it's even more so because subparagraphs C and D both contain the very important qualification that the action is according to whatever the council considers appropriate. And if the council does not consider it appropriate to, as Councillor Ward says, kick it into the long grass, then it's not obliged to. What both C and D do, using that appropriate language, gives the council the freedom and the capacity to go off and do the appropriate thing and not be forced into doing what actually might be inappropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Murray.
Thank you. I think this is a menu of options, isn't it? It seems to me like, you know, once you've all debated the petition, you've got 4 options of what you can decide. So you can decide, hey, yes, great, with thanks very much, we're going to do it, whatever the petition is, right? Or I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Petitioners, but we've had a debate and we're not going to do it. But then the other one is that that's not a bad idea. We like it, but we're going to we need to think on it a bit more. So this is like an option. It's a menu of options. I think. I don't think it's a fait accompli. This is what's going to happen. It just gives the council, once they've finished the debate, a menu of options what can happen. And I think that seems like a sensible thing, Councillor Ward. That's my feeling on it, and it opens up all these options. And I think if I was a petitioner coming to it, I'd say, well, thanks very much. You'll tell me what you've decided eventually. You know what I mean? I think that's important. So I'm fairly comfortable with it, really, when I look at it as a menu of options of what you can come up with. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Follows.
I absolutely agree with everything Councillor Murray just said. Sorry, was there a point of order?
No.
No, sorry. I agree with everything Councillor Murray just said, and just would add the extra point, which is one I think I made quite poorly earlier. There are a number of things that have to be referred to another committee to go and fleshed out because it's within their function. It's not within council's competence to do. So not only is it sometimes a menu of options, sometimes it's actually a firm requirement in law, I believe it would be, that it would need to go back to, say, the executive to be fleshed out. The bit that I would probably want to add into the original document, if anybody wants to do that tonight, I'm really not sure at this point, especially as there's a slight irony of debating the ability to remove a referral to a committee by referring it back to a committee, is that I think the substance of the issue is that the committee that heard the petition should have a report back to it on the outcome of its referral. So, for example, council refers a petition to the executive, then it goes to executive, the matter is concluded. Now, unless some cause has required it to come back to council, that will be the last anybody hears about it. So I think what I would be proposing, rather than removing this quite sensible and in a couple of cases legal requirement for a set of options, would be to mandate that the committee that heard the petition originally be given a report on the outcomes of that petition once it's concluded from wherever it's been referred to, so that everybody knows what's happened and that there is an opportunity to debate what has happened on the committee that heard the petition. That's what I would propose.
Councillor Weldon.
Thank you. I just want to echo what Councillor Munro said earlier on the previous occasion. I don't see the point of referring it back to the committee now. I think we should either be for it or against it. Let's go to the vote. Thank you.
We have one more speaker, Councillor Hyman.
Thank you. Yes, just reading through this, I don't see any problem with us agreeing to this. unless we're trying to force a different result effectively in advance to a position we think might come forward. A is to support, B is to not support, C is to, if we don't have sufficient information to, if council, majority of us, and that may just be the ruling party, the administration, if they've got a majority, the rest may all be unhappy about it, but if we feel that we haven't got enough information to make a decision, we can refer it so that we get another report. That's what C says. And it is perfectly within council's ability at that point to say, we want it to come back to us. No problem at all. D is actually to delegate the decision. It's the same, to send it back to get more information, but it is to delegate the decision. It's to another committee to make that decision. The problem that I've got here is that in reality, what we're likely to find, and this is harping back to the one that we had, is that actually the wording of the petition itself puts us in a difficult position. And that would be, and what we're actually likely to want to do in here, if this situation arises, is we're going to want to say to the petitioner, do you mind rewording this so that we can make a decision on it? Because your wording gives us problems with making a decision. Do you understand? That's the situation we're likely to be in.
Thank you, Councillor
Now,
Hyman.
I think this allows us to do it.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Hyman. I'm going to interrupt you and just say that what we are now going to do, what we're speaking about is the amendment to defer, which was to defer to the Standards Committee. So I'm going to go to Councillor Gale now for your right of reply, because you are the seconder.
I don't think I've got anything to add to what everybody's been saying, to be perfectly honest.
Okay, and then Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, the idea was to raise people's interest in this, and it seems to have worked. When I said, and I was the original leader of this council that actually suggested that we started getting a little closer to Guildford. But I didn't envisage Siamese twins. I envisaged closeness. So this plea to be identical, I find is going perhaps a little too far. Anyway, we've all had a shot at saying something, which has been the point of it. My real point is that if a petitioner brings something to council, he should get an answer from council. Now, if he gets it at that meeting, great. If there's a way that he gets it at a subsequent meeting, great. But I just don't want it to go in the long grass. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are going to vote on the amendment seconded by Councillor Gale to defer this back to standards. When lights show, please vote. The amendment falls with 8 in favour of it and 30 against. So I think there were no other speakers. I'm going to go to Councillor Nicholson to speak to second the original.
Thank you. I don't have to say an awful lot about this. I think the Standards Committee have looked at this and they do want both councils to work together. They do want some symmetry between what how we're working. They've worked very hard on this, and I think Councillor Goodrich's point was a good point on this one, and I do fully back the item. Thank you.
Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was personally happy with it being referred back to standards as a result of the debate. but there we go. But as it hasn't been, I do want to comment on one thing, actually. I think Councillor Gale asked a very important question early on in the debate, that if the main council refers it to any other committee or to the executive, whoever, she asked the question, does it come back to the full council to ratify that decision or to come to a different decision? I may be corrected here by the monitoring officer, but my understanding of the whole situation is that the council is the ultimate decision-taking body, apart from certain specific things that can't get involved in overruling things that are executive functions. But in terms of petitions, if a petition reaches the threshold to be decided by the full council, my understanding would be that if the full council refers it to somebody else for additional information or for guidance or what have you, it would have to come back to the full council because it was a petition which reached the threshold of having to be decided by the full council. So I'd like the monitoring officer to correct me if I'm wrong in saying that, because I think that is the basic thing that people were mainly concerned about. So if I'm correct in saying that, I think it resolves a lot of problems, but maybe I'm wrong.
So through you, Madam Mayor, partly right to Councillor MacLeod. It is a choice for council on each case-by-case basis. So if they receive a petition and they wish to refer it to a committee, they can direct that the committee makes a decision and deals with the petition, or they can direct that that committee provides advice back to council for council to make a determination. The only exception would be where they are executive functions or powers, in which case it would be in the remit of the executive to deal with it, but council could still ask for a report back on the outcome from the executive. So it is, I think it is little d that covers that, that says that the council can refer it to another body and can request that they decide it or take any other action directed by the council. So it could be that they consider it and refer it back to council if that's what council wanted.
Thank you for that answer. Give me a better understanding. But I'm still comfortable, actually. It leaves the full council in full control, actually. They can decide to take a decision or they can decide to refer it to somebody else. And if they decide to do that, that's a decision of the full council. So they're still fully in control, or they can ask for it to be brought back to them. So I don't see a problem, actually. Maybe it wasn't spelled out clearly enough, but I think the full council is fully in control, actually, from what the monitoring officer has told us. They can decide what to do. They can decide to take a decision or not to take a decision, refer it back to somebody and ask for it to back to them, or refer it back to somebody to take a decision. As far as I can see, the full council is fully in control. So in that case, I would actually go back to recommending what we're recommending to council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I'm going to take the vote. We have the recommendation in front of us. When lights show, please vote. So that is carried with 35 for, 2 abstentions and 1 against. Before we go on to the agenda, from where I am here, I can see that there are people struggling to stay awake, and I can see that we're not all here. Some people or someone has already left. And it's already been said that most councils get through business much more rapidly. So we have 3 items left. It is 20 to 10. Agenda item 14, section 151, officer protocol. Are there any questions for clarity? Councillor MacLeod, would you like to propose?
I would like to propose,
Do you have a seconder? Do you reserve your right? Councillor MacLeod.
I think this is an important but fairly straightforward issue, actually. The Section 5151 officers are a very important statutory function to ensure that the council makes proper financial arrangements as required by Local Government Act in 1972. So that's what this document does. It sets out very clearly the responsibilities of the Section 151 officer, and I recommend this document to the council for approval.
Thank you. Are there any speakers, Councillor Murray? No? No speakers? Councillor Nicholson, would you like to second?
Yes, thank you. I really would like to second this. I fully support this document. I remember some time ago we had a debate about reserves, whether they were earmarked, partly earmarked, not earmarked. We had a great deal of conversation whether we were going to blow the money or blow some of it or none of it. And the Section 15 officer came in at the end. It cleared everything up very nicely for us. I thought, this is very good. This is just what a Section 15 officer should do. And they should have prominence within the council. So I do fully support this. Thank you.
Councillor MacLeod, do you have anything left to say?
No, nothing to add,
No.
Madam.
So when lights show, please vote. So that is carried 38 in favour, unanimous. Agenda item 15, terms of reference, Joint Appeals Committee and Joint Independent Persons Panel. Are there any questions of clarity? Nope. Councillor MacLeod, is this something else you're going to propose for us?
I believe I have a seconder.
And you have a seconder? And do you reserve your right to speak? Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This again is a very important issue, actually. It's something that would happen very rarely. We're talking about disciplinary action of the senior officers in the council and establishing the bodies necessary to deal with it, actually. So it's fully explained in the document, and I will leave it to people to comment on. I recommend what's proposed in the document. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any speakers? No speakers? When lights show, please vote. So sorry. Would you like to speak to? Okay. And Councillor MacLeod, you had nothing left to say? No.
That's correct.
So when lights show, please vote. That is carried. And agenda item 16, constitutional updates. Are there any questions of clarity? Councillor MacLeod?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I wish to propose the recommendations set out in the papers.
And you have a seconder? And do you wish to reserve your right to speak? Marvellous. Councillor MacLeod?
I really have nothing to add to what's in the papers. I think they're very, very clear.
Thank you. Are there any speakers? Councillor Nicholson?
And neither do I.
No. When lights show, please vote. That is carried unanimously. So at 9:45 now, what if we can do that much business in a few minutes? Okay, we finish at 9:45.